For 800 years, these men have spun in perfect circles not to perform a dance, but to abandon their egos and physically touch the divine. They are the Whirling Dervishes, and they believe that to spin is to join the very rhythm of the universe itself. Imagine a silence so profound that the only sound you hear is the beat of your own heart. Then a solitary, piercing note breaks the stillness. It is the sound of the ney, a reed flute that cries out with a longing that feels ancient, older than time itself. In the shadows, figures emerge. They are draped in black cloaks, moving with the solemnity of shadows. They bow to one another, not as strangers, but as souls acknowledging the divine spark hidden within human clay. Suddenly, the black cloaks are cast aside. Underneath, pristine white robes are revealed, glowing in the dim light like shrouds of resurrection. The music swells, a rhythmic, hypnotic heartbeat of drums and chanting. One by one, they begin to turn. Slowly at first, like a flower unfurling its petals to the sun, and then faster. Their skirts expand into perfect white discs, spinning in defiance of gravity. They are no longer men. They are planets orbiting a sun, electrons circling a nucleus. This is not a performance for an audience. It is a private conversation with God. You are witnessing the Sema, the mystic ceremony of the Mevlevi order. Today, we step into the circle to understand why, for centuries, the dervishes have spun to find stillness in motion. Welcome to Culture Journey. Today, our path leads us to the spiritual heart of Turkey, to the ancient city of Konya, where the dusty winds of the Anatolian steppe carry the whispers of poets and mystics. We are here to explore one of the most visually arresting and spiritually profound traditions in the world, the Sufi Whirling Dervishes. While many travelers recognize the iconic image of the spinning dancer in the tall felt hat, few truly understand the depth of what is happening beneath those white robes. This is not folklore, and it is certainly not just a tourist attraction. It is a scientific and spiritual philosophy made visible. It is the physical manifestation of the idea that everything in the universe, from the smallest atom to the furthest galaxy, is revolving. To the people of Turkey, and specifically to the followers of the Mevlevi order, this tradition is a sacred heritage. It represents a bridge between the earthly world and the celestial realm. It is a reminder that love is the fundamental force of existence. As we peel back the layers of history today, we will discover how a 13th century poet named Rumi changed the way the world thinks about devotion, and how this mesmerizing ritual has survived empires, bans, and the rush of the modern world. So take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let us begin our journey into the mystery of the spin. To understand the dance, we must first understand the man who inspired it. His name was Jalaluddin Rumi, known to the world simply as Rumi, and to the Turks as Mevlana, our master. Born in the 13th century, Rumi was a respected Islamic scholar, a man of books and theology, but his life changed forever when he met a wandering mystic named Shams of Tabriz. Shams was a wild, unconventional spiritualist who challenged Rumi to look beyond the books and find God in the heart. Their friendship was intense and transformative. When Shams disappeared, some say murdered by jealous disciples, others say he fled to teach Rumi a lesson in longing, Rumi was shattered. Here is a question for you. Have you ever experienced a grief so strong that it forced you to change the way you see the world? For Rumi, grief became the catalyst for poetry. Legend tells us that one day, while walking through the marketplace, Rumi heard the rhythmic hammering of gold beaters. Clang, clang, clang. In that rhythmic pounding, he heard the name of God. Overwhelmed with joy and longing, he opened his arms and began to spin. He spun until he was dizzy with divine love. This spontaneous moment was the birth of the Sema ceremony. Rumi did not found the order himself. It was his son, Sultan Velid, who organized his father's teachings and the whirling ritual into the structured Mevlevi order we see today. But the soul of the practice remains purely Rumi's, the belief that the wound is the place where the light enters you. Everything you see in the Sema ceremony is dripping with symbolism. Nothing is accidental. Every piece of clothing tells a story of death and rebirth. When the dervish enters the hall, he wears a long black cloak called the hirka. This represents the grave and the weight of the worldly ego, the selfish I that separates us from the divine. On his head sits a tall, honey-colored felt hat called the sikke. This tall hat represents the tombstone of the ego. It is a stark reminder that to truly live spiritually, one's selfish desires must die. The most dramatic moment of the ceremony occurs when the dervishes stand up and cast off their black cloaks. Did you know that this simple gesture is considered the most critical point of the ritual? It symbolizes the dervish emerging from the grave of his ego. Underneath, he wears the tenur, a white robe with a wide flowing skirt. The white represents the burial shroud. By wearing the shroud while still alive, the dervish is making a powerful statement. I am dead to the world of material things, and I am alive only to the truth. The waist is bound by a belt, dividing the body into two halves, representing the separation between the lower instincts and the higher spiritual state. As they prepare to turn, they are not dressing up for a show. They are dressing down to their souls. The ceremony itself, known as the Sema, is a carefully choreographed journey through the spiritual ascent. It is accompanied by classical Turkish music, primarily driven by the ney. The ney is a reed flute with a very specific metaphor. The reed is torn from the riverbed, dried and drilled with holes. Its mournful sound is said to be the reed crying for the home it was taken from. In Sufi philosophy, the human soul is like that reed, torn from the presence of God and crying out to return. The ritual begins with a eulogy to the Prophet Muhammad, followed by a drum beat symbolizing the command be, which created the universe. Then comes the taksim, an improvisation on the flute. The dervishes then perform the Sultan Veled walk, circling the hall 3 times. This represents the 3 stages of knowledge: knowing through science, knowing through sight, and knowing through direct experience. They bow to each other, acknowledging the divine breath within every human. Then the whirling begins. This is not a free-form spin. The dervish crosses his arms over his chest, hands resting on his shoulders. In this position, he looks like the number 1, testifying to the oneness of God. As he begins to rotate, his arms unfold. If you were there watching this unfold, you would notice something very specific about their hands. The right hand is raised toward the sky, palm open, receiving divine grace from God. The left hand is turned downward toward the earth. The philosophy here is beautiful and profound. We receive from God, and without keeping anything for ourselves, we pass it down to humanity. The dervish becomes a conduit, a vessel through which love flows from the heavens to the earth. They spin counterclockwise, leading with the heart. The left foot drives the movement, acting as an anchor, while the right foot propels them. They revolve around their own heart, and simultaneously, the group revolves around the center of the hall, mimicking the rotation of the planets around the sun. As the whirling intensifies, the dervishes enter a 4-stage spiritual journey, known as the 4 Salams. In the first Salam, the dervish starts spinning to recognize his own servitude. It is the physical realization that God exists. As the music builds, he enters the second Salam, where that recognition turns into awe, a deep, overwhelming wonder at the magnificence of creation. This awe evolves in the third Salam into something far more powerful: pure love. This is the ecstatic peak of the ceremony, where the mind is sacrificed to the heart, and the dancer is lost in the divine. Finally, the music slows for the 4th Salam. The dervish does not stay in the heavens. He returns to his servitude, calming his spin, coming back to earth to serve humanity with the love he has found. One question that has fascinated travelers from around the world for centuries is, how do they not get dizzy? If you or I were to spin in circles for 20 minutes, we would likely fall over. Yet, the dervishes maintain perfect balance. There is a physiological aspect to this, but mostly it is mental. Dervishes undergo rigorous training, sometimes for years. They learn to focus their eyes on the thumb of their left hand, or a fixed point in their mind. But the spiritual explanation is perhaps more compelling. They say that dizziness is caused by the conflict between the inner ear and the eyes, a confusion of reality. But when the dervish spins, he is centered. He is not looking at the blurring world outside. He is focused entirely on the still point within his heart. When the center is still, the chaos of the periphery does not affect you. This mirrors the Sufi concept of life. The world around us is chaotic, spinning, and constantly changing. If we focus on the chaos, we fall. If we focus on the center, the divine truth, we remain stable. It is important to understand that the Mevlevi order is grounded in Islam, yet Rumi's message was radically inclusive for his time. One of his most famous poems invites everyone. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again, come. This universality is perhaps why the tradition has survived. However, it has faced great threats. In 1925, shortly after the founding of the modern Turkish Republic, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk banned all Sufi orders in an effort to modernize and secularize the country. The lodges were closed, the costumes forbidden. For decades, the Sema went underground, practiced in secret inside private homes. The music played quietly so neighbors wouldn't hear. It wasn't until the 1950s that the Turkish government realized the immense cultural value of the Mevlevi tradition and allowed it to return, initially just as a cultural performance for tourists. Today, the ban is technically still on the books, but the order is tolerated and even celebrated as a symbol of Turkish culture. This creates a complex dynamic. Today, you can see whirling dervishes in restaurants in Istanbul or at gala dinners. But true spiritual seekers argue that the Sema cannot be performed while people are eating kebabs or chatting. It requires a sacred space. The authentic ceremony, performed annually in Konya during the Sebi Arus, remains a deeply solemn religious observance. I'm curious, what do you think about sacred rituals becoming tourist attractions? Does it dilute the meaning, or does it help preserve a tradition that might otherwise vanish? The survival of the whirling dervishes is a testament to the resilience of faith. In a world that prizes speed, noise, and accumulation, the dervish offers a counter-narrative. They offer a philosophy of emptying oneself. They show us that by letting go of everything, our ego, our status, our black cloaks, we gain the universe. They teach us that life is a balance of holding on and letting go, of motion and stillness. As the ceremony ends, the dervishes cross their arms again, returning to the one, the state of unity. They put their black cloaks back on. They have returned to the world, but they carry the silence of the spin within them. The music fades, and the final prayer is recited. The journey to the sky is over, and the journey of service on earth begins again. The Sufi whirling of Turkey is far more than a hypnotic spectacle of white fabric and haunting music. It is a mirror of the human soul and a map of the cosmos. It reminds us that we are all part of a great turning wheel. From the electrons in our atoms to the planets in our solar system, everything is in motion, and everything is connected. The dervish does not spin to escape the world, but to understand it better. By becoming empty of themselves, they become full of empathy, love, and grace. In the end, the lesson of the Sema is simple yet profound. To find your balance, you must find your center. And that center is love. Love for the Creator, and love for every single being that shares this turning earth with us. As Rumi famously said, "Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion." Every culture is a mirror of the human soul, and the journey to understand it may never truly end. We hope this glimpse into the mystic heart of Turkey has brought a little bit of that stillness into your own day. Thank you for traveling with us to Konya today. We would love to hear your voice in the conversation. If you could ask Rumi one question today, what would it be? Or tell us in the comments, which part of the dervish philosophy resonated most with you? Was it the symbolism of the clothing, or the idea of being a conduit between heaven and earth? If you enjoyed today's journey, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Culture Journey. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a trip to the beautiful cultural corners of our world. Until next time, keep exploring and keep turning.